Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine for a moment a world where pretty much everything, the weather, your crops, winning a battle, even, falling in love, it's all down to these incredibly powerful, yet very human-like gods.
That's ancient Greece in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about belief, it was woven into the absolute fabric of their existence.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're taking your stack of sources, historical accounts, myths, even looking at the architecture, and we're going to sort of cut through the complexity. We want to show you how ancient Greek religion really functioned. It was like their society's operating system.
It really was. And it's fascinating because unlike maybe how we think of religion now, it wasn't just a Sunday thing or something confined to a temple. It was everywhere, constant.
So our mission here is to give you the real core understanding. We're focusing on the big names, the Olympian gods, and also some of the frankly surprising ways belief actually showed up in daily life. We've sifted through a lot to get you the key stuff.
And by the end of this, you should have a much clearer picture of, how the Greeks actually interacted with their gods, why their gods were so, human. And how that shaped everything from huge public festivals right down to very private, personal moments.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The first thing that really hits you from the sources is just how total this was. You're saying religion was deeply personal, constant, not just formal ceremonies.
Precisely. It permeated everything. You had the formal rituals, sheer animal sacrifices, pouring libations, that kind of thing.
Right.
But it was also embedded in their myths. The stories that explained where people came from, why the seasons change, and gave the gods these, very relatable human personalities.
And it wasn't just in their heads or stories, it was physically there too, right? I mean, temples were huge features in their cities.
Absolutely. They dominated the landscape. And public life, big city festivals, national games, art competitions, these were all fundamentally religious events dedicated to honoring the gods.
So even if maybe one person's personal belief was a bit shaky, the whole society basically ran on this shared understanding. The gods are real, they can mess with your life or help you.
And they notice when you show piety.
Yeah.
They respond. It was the bedrock assumption.
Okay, so moving on to the gods themselves, it was polytheistic, meaning lots of gods.
Lots of gods, yeah. A whole pantheon representing, almost every aspect of life and nature. Even abstract concepts like justice, wisdom, they had gods for those too.
But the main ones, the ones everyone knew, were the Olympians, living up on Mount Olympus, supposedly, led by Zeus.
Right. The usual list you see is 12. Zeus, his wife Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hermes, and Dionysus.
Those are the big names.
They are. But what's really interesting, and one of our sources highlights this, is that it wasn't totally rigid. Yeah, depending on the local tradition, sometimes Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, was counted among the 12 instead of Dionysus.
So even the top tier had some flexibility. That feels different.
It does. It suggests local importance matter, maybe regional priorities. It wasn't a single, centrally dictated doctrine.
Which brings us to maybe the most compelling part. These gods weren't just abstract powers. They were imagined and shown in art and stories as having human bodies, human personalities, flaws and all.
Oh, absolutely. This is key. They weren't perfect beings. They got married, they had kids, often through scandalous affairs. The myths loved to detail. They argued, they fought, they meddled constantly in human lives.
So they could be just, but also petty, jealous, vengeful.
All of it.
Yep.
Capable of great good and great terribleness. It made them, in a strange way, relatable. Like superpowered, immortal, sometimes terrible neighbors.
And the stories about them, the myths, were central. Passed down orally first, then written by poets like Hesiod and, woven into Homer's epics.
Crucially, though, there wasn't one single holy book like you might find in other religions. No Bible, no Quran.
Right.
The myths were fluid. They explained the world, natural phenomena, human emotions, but they were also just great stories.
And this connection meant gods became tied to specific places too, like patrons of cities.
Yeah, definitely. Aphrodite was huge in Corinth, Helios in Rhodes, and people would call on specific gods for specific needs. Ares for war, Hera for marriage.
And they even imported gods.
They did. Adonis is a good example, originally from the Near East. Plus you had localized spirits like nymphs for springs and rivers. It was a very dynamic, adaptable system.
So if the gods were everywhere in spirit, what about the physical places of worship? The temples, the naos, you called it.
Right, the naos literally meaning dwelling place. This was seen as the god's house. essentially.
Started simple, like altars.
Yeah, probably. But they evolved into these massive, elaborate stone buildings designed to house a magnificent cult statue of the god, think of Athena in the Parthenon, or the colossal Zeus at Olympia.
Wow. And these were often in special sacred areas.
Often, yes, set apart, sometimes on a high point like an Acropolis. This whole sacred precinct was called a temenos. You'd enter through special gateways, propylon, marking it off from the ordinary world.
And people donated to build and maintain these.
Hugely. It was a major way to show piety or celebrate things like military victories. The sources mention permanent staff, neocore, who looked after the sites. It was a big operation.
Okay, so you have these grand temples. Inside, you've got the statue. You'd think that's where all the action happened. But the sources say something else, don't they? Something quite surprising.
They really do. And this is a key insight. The main religious action, the core rituals like sacrifice and prayer, they almost always happen outside the temple at an altar in the open air.
Outside, not inside the god's house.
Nope, mostly outside. Which tells you something important, I think. It wasn't about being enclosed in a building. It was a more public, communal act under the sky, connecting directly with the divine in the world. Very different from many modern traditions.
That really does shift the picture. So what were these outdoor rituals like?
Well, the big ones were animal sacrifice and libations, pouring liquids like wine or oil, always accompanied by prayers.
What kinds of animals?
Usually pigs, sheep, goats, sometimes cattle for really big occasions. And interestingly, the animal's sex had to match the god's male animal for a male god, female for a goddess.
Huh. And there was a specific process?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Very specific. A designated butcher, the Migeras, would kill the animal. Sometimes a young girl would sprinkle seeds on its head first, maybe symbolizing life or regeneration, scholars think.
And then what happened to the meat?
Two options, basically. Sometimes it was burnt entirely, a whole offering to the god. More often, part was burnt for the god and the rest was cooked and shared among the worshippers. A communal feast.
So religion was also about community and food.
Absolutely. And they also practiced divination, looking for signs in the animal's entrails after sacrifice, trying to predict the future.
Right. And who led all this? The priests.
Priests and priestesses, yes. They orchestrated the ceremonies, said the prayers. It wasn't usually a full-time specialized job like we might think. Often it was a temporary role, sometimes elected or chosen by lot, and generally open to citizens.
And they had special status.
When performing their duties, yes. Wearing the sacred headband made their person inviolable.
But they weren't like theologians.
Not necessarily. They knew the rituals for their specific god. If you had deeper questions about religious law or interpretation, you'd consult a state official called an exegetes.
Okay. And you mentioned priestesses. Women had these roles. That seems significant given their limited public life otherwise.
It's very significant.
Yeah.
Yes, women served as priests, often prominent roles, sometimes specific criteria applied like needing to be a virgin or past menopause. But they held considerable religious authority in certain cults. And worshippers could be men and women, though some rites were restricted.
So beyond these, let's say, official public rituals, there were other layers too, like mysteries.
Yes, the mystery cults. These were rites open only to initiates. The most famous were the Eleusinian mysteries, near Athens.
What was the appeal there?
Participants believed these secret rituals offered special spiritual benefits, crucially, including the promise of a better afterlife, something standard Greek religion wasn't always clear about.
It's interesting. And then you had oracles, like Delphi.
Exactly. Places considered especially potent for receiving divine communication. Delphi, sacred to Apollo, was the most famous, but Zeus had a major oracle at Dodona too.
So people went there for advice?
Individuals, cities, even kings went to consult the oracle. The priest or priestess would deliver pronouncements, often famously ambiguous or cryptic.
Cover your bases.
Pretty much. Gave you something to think about, but rarely a simple yes or no.
And religion wasn't just solemn rituals, it was tied into festivals and games too.
Absolutely central to them. Athletic contests, music competitions, playing the Kithara or lyre theater performances, both tragedy and comedy. These were all parts of major religious festivals.
Like the city Dionysia in Athens, or the Olympic Games.
Precisely. The big Panhellenic Games at Olympia, Delphi, Nemea, Isthmia. These were fundamentally religious events honoring Zeus, Apollo, or Poseidon. people traveled from all over Greece.
Like pilgrimages.
Very much so. And their sacred status was underlined by the fact that a truce was declared, warfare was forbidden during the games, and travelers were guaranteed safe passage.
That's powerful.
It shows how deeply embedded it was. And it wasn't only huge events. Sources mention smaller, more exclusive festivals too, like one in Athens called the Araphoria, just for priestesses and a few girls. So a whole spectrum of activity.
And what about just regular people, day to day? Was it all temples and festivals?
Not at all. And this is crucial. Greek religion was practiced anywhere, anytime. It was deeply personal too.
How so?
Well, the hearth in your own home was considered a sacred space. People could pop into a temple whenever they felt like it. It was normal to say a quick prayer just walking past one.
Just a casual nod to the gods.
Sort of, yeah. And simple offerings were common bits of incense, flowers, food, given either hoping for something or as thanks.
Could individuals do their own sacrifices?
If they had the money and space, yes. We find stone markers, reliefs, commemorating private sacrifices. And people sought healing at temples associated with healing gods, like Asclepius. Epidaurus was a famous healing sanctuary.
So it touched health, home, everything.
Pretty much. And people were always looking for signs from the gods in everyday life.
Signs? Like what?
Oh, anything unusual. The way birds flew, a chance remark overheard, even something as simple as a sneeze at the right or wrong moment. All could be interpreted as omens. Hints about the future. Their world felt, I think, very alive with potential divine messages.
Now, it wasn't all unquestioning belief, right? Some people pushed back.
That's true. Especially from the 5th century BCE onwards, you see intellectuals, philosophers, playwrights starting to question things. They particularly criticized the, let's say, less than moral behavior of the gods described in the myths.
Like, how can gods be good if they act so badly?
Exactly. That kind of philosophical critique emerged.
Did that change things for most people?
Well, that's the key point our sources stress. Despite these intellectual critiques, the overwhelming evidence from archaeology, from inscriptions, from literature, shows that for the vast majority of ancient Greeks, religion remained absolutely fundamental. It was just how their world worked.
So, wrapping this up then, we've journeyed through ancient Greek religion and seen it wasn't just this isolated thing. It was personal, direct, and just constantly there.
Yeah, from the massive public spectacles, the temples, the festivals, right down to a prayer whispered at the hearth, or looking for meaning in a flock of birds. It touched every part of life.
It really is amazing how this system, polytheistic, with gods that were so, well, human warts and all, how it stayed so central for so long. It wasn't abstract, it was incredibly immediate and relatable for them.
It really was. And maybe that leaves you, our listener, with something to think about. What does it tell us about, well, human nature, perhaps, that even now, thousands of years later, these ancient stories, these flawed, powerful Olympian gods still grab our imagination?
Yeah, they're still everywhere in our culture, in our storytelling.
Right. So what does that enduring fascination reveal? Maybe something about our own deep-seated need for explanation, for order. Or maybe just for some really good drama projected onto the cosmos. Something to ponder.